In this lesson, we will learn about Azure Private IP addresses. First, we will learn about private IP addresses assigned to Azure resources. After that, we will create a new Azure VM, then assign a static IP address to the Azure VM. Finally, we will conclude our lesson with the review questions. As you know, when connected to an Azure subnet, network interfaces or private endpoints of any Azure resources, such as Azure VMs, Azure internal load balancers, and application gateways, will be associated with private IPs. By default, the Azure VNet dynamically assigns a private IP address to a connected NIC. Dynamic IP addresses may be changed. For example, when we install this VM and connect it to the production subnet, the VM will be assigned the first available IP address in the production subnet range dynamically. Similarly, when we install this server and connect it to the development subnet, it will be assigned with the first available IP address in the dev subnet range. For Azure resources that provide services or are part of firewall rules, it is required to assign static IP addresses to prevent the IP addresses of these resources from being changed. For example, we plan to promote this VM to a domain controller, which means it will provide Active Directory and DNS services to the client. If the IP address of this VM keeps changing, then the client cannot locate the services. Therefore, we have to assign the static IP address for this VM, and the static IP addresses that can be assigned must be in the subnet IP range, unassigned, and are not reserved IP addresses. So to assign the static IP address for this VM, we have to use the IP address in the production subnet range, and it is not assigned to any other resources, and the IP address is not the reserved IP address. So the best option is to use the IP address dynamically assigned to the VM and make it the static IP address. So how to assign static private IP addresses? As you know, Azure does not allow to assign static IP addresses in the operating system running on Azure resources. Static IP addresses can only be configured on the private endpoints or network interfaces of the resources via Azure configuration. For example, if we want to assign a static IP address to this VM running Windows operating system, we should not log into the Windows operating system running on this VM and configure the static IP address. Instead, we have to log into the Azure portal and find the network interface connect to the VM and assign the static IP address to the network interface. Now let's create a new VM and name it MAZPDC01. To do that, we need to create a new resource group. So click on Resource Groups and click on Create. Here in the resource group name, we type in ITL-VM-RG01 and we keep the same region East US, and then click on Review and Create, then click on the Create button. That's it. The resource group ITL-VM-RG01 has been created successfully. To create a new VM, in the search box, we type in virtual machines, then click on virtual machines, then click on create Azure virtual machines. In the resource group, we pick up the VM RG01 resource group and type in the virtual machine name MAZ PDC01 and keep the same region is US. And in the availability option, we choose no infrastructure to make it simple. And in the security type, we choose standard. Now let's select the operating system. So in the image, we choose Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition. And to set the cost, we select the box Run with Azure Spot Discounts because this is a lab environment. In the production environment, we should not select this option. Let's scroll down, and in the username, we type in ITL admin, and in the password, we copy the password that we made up before and paste the password. And in the confirm password box, we paste the same password. Now let's click on the next button. Then click on OS disk size. Here are all the options that we can select for the disk. Just keep the default. And in the OS disk type, we select standard HDD to keep the cost low. And click on the networking. In the networking, we select our virtual network, EUS VNet01. And in the subnet, we select the production subnet. And in the public IP, we select none so that it's not creating a new public IP. And in the network security group, to make it simple, we select none. And in the load balancing option, we select none. Now let's click next to go to the management tab. In the management tab, we keep the default option, so click next to go to the monitoring tab. In the monitoring, we disable boot diagnostics, so click next to go to the advanced tab. In the advanced tab, we keep the default options, so click next to go to the tags tab. In the tags tab, we do not add any tags, so click next to go to review and create tab. Now Azure is running the final validation and the validation passed, so just click create. Now the VM is being created and it takes several minutes to create the VM, and the VM is created successfully. Let's click go to resource, and here is the VM. Now let's assign a static IP address to the VM MAZ-PDC01. To do that, we first need to stop the VM, then click on it to open. In the networking, we click on network settings, then we click on the network interface to open it. And as you can see, it goes directly to the IP configuration of the network interface that is associated with the VM. And we click on the IP configure to assign the static by click on static in the allocation. As you can see, here we have the option to change to a new IP address that is not reserved and unassigned to any Azure resources. In this case, we want to keep the same IP address, but just want to make it static. So we just need to click on the Save button. And that's it, we have just changed the IP address assigned to the VM MAZ-PDC01 from dynamic to static. Now let's conclude our lesson with the review questions.